The morning Marcus Webb pulled into the Meridian Tower parking lot, he had exactly $47 in his checking account, a 7-year-old daughter with a fever he couldn't afford to let get worse, and a cooler full of handmade lunches he'd been delivering to construction crews for the past 2 years just to keep the lights on. He wasn't looking for trouble. He was just trying to survive. But trouble, as it turned out, was already dressed in a red power suit and waiting for him in the lobby. He'd parked in the loading zone, the same unmarked stretch of asphalt he'd used every Tuesday and Thursday for 6 months without a single complaint. The building manager had verbally approved it. There was no sign. There was no painted curb. There was only a woman named Victoria Hale, CEO of Meridian Enterprises, who looked out her 42nd floor window that morning and decided that the dented white pickup truck sitting below her building was an eyesore she didn't have to tolerate. If you believe in kindness, second chances, and the idea that every person deserves to be seen, please take a moment right now to like this video, leave a comment below, share it with someone who needs to hear this story, and subscribe to Kindness Corner so you never miss a moment that matters. Marcus was halfway through his third delivery when he walked back to the lot and found nothing but empty pavement where his truck had been. His cooler was gone. His deliveries were gone. His entire livelihood, sitting on 4 wheels, had been swallowed by the city at the request of one phone call from someone who never once came downstairs to ask him to move. He stood there on the concrete, the late October wind cutting through his thin jacket, and felt the specific kind of devastation that only a person who has nothing left to lose can truly understand. He called the impound lot. $380 to get it back. He had 47. He called his sister, but she was between paychecks. He called the building manager, who apologized profusely and admitted that Ms. Hale had personally instructed him to have it towed, calling it a liability and an embarrassment to the building's image. Marcus sat down on the curb and put his face in his hands, not because he was weak, but because some blows land somewhere deeper than anger can reach. What Victoria Hale did not know, what she could not have bothered to find out, was who Marcus Webb actually was. She didn't know that 3 years earlier, he had been the lead structural engineer on the Harlow Bridge renovation project, the most complex infrastructure overhaul the state had seen in a decade. She didn't know that he'd walked away from a 6-figure salary after his wife, Dana, died of an aggressive cancer that left him with a mountain of medical debt and a little girl named Rosie who was afraid to sleep alone. She didn't know that he'd sold his condo, his car, and most of his furniture to keep Rosie fed and enrolled in her school, where she had 2 best friends and a teacher who called her brilliant. She didn't know that the lunch delivery business was a temporary bridge, something Marcus had built with his own hands while he waited for a contract bid he'd submitted 8 weeks earlier to come through. The bid was for the structural assessment and redesign of Meridian Tower's East Wing expansion, a $40 million project that Victoria Hale's own board had been quietly circling for months. Marcus had submitted it under his consulting firm, Webb Structural Solutions, a name so modest it gave no hint of the 17 years of elite engineering experience behind it. The board had narrowed their shortlist to 3 firms. Webb Structural Solutions was at the top. None of this crossed Victoria's mind as she sat in her corner office that afternoon, approving quarterly reports and taking calls from investors. She had made a decision, the way she made all decisions, quickly, cleanly, and without looking down. But the world had a way of making people look down eventually. It was her director of operations, Paul Greer, who first made the connection. He'd been in the parking lot that morning getting coffee from a food cart when he watched the tow truck pull away, and he'd spoken briefly to Marcus, just long enough to catch his name and the name of his company on the side of the cooler. By 2 o'clock that afternoon, Paul was standing in Victoria's doorway with a tablet in his hand and an expression she had never seen on his face before. He pulled up the shortlist. He pointed to the name at the top. He set the tablet on her desk and waited. The silence in that room lasted a long time. Within the hour, 3 board members had crowded into Victoria's office. The head of acquisitions pulled up Marcus's professional profile, his published engineering papers, his award-winning work on the Harlow Bridge, his decade and a half of credentials that read like a quiet, unpretentious masterclass in structural brilliance. They started making calls. The building manager confirmed everything. The impound lot confirmed the tow. And slowly, like cold water rising, the full weight of what had happened that morning began to settle over the room. They sent Paul to find him. Marcus was sitting at a diner 2 blocks away, nursing a coffee he'd found enough change to buy, trying to figure out how to explain to Rosie that dinner might be thin that night. When Paul walked in and told him that the board of Meridian Enterprises was requesting a meeting, that Miss Hale herself wanted to speak with him, Marcus looked up with eyes that were tired in the way only single parents carrying invisible weight can be tired, and he said simply that he would come. He walked into that boardroom in his worn jacket and work boots, and every person at that long polished table felt the discomfort of the contrast they had created. Victoria Hale stood up when he entered, and for a moment she didn't speak. She was a woman who had spent 20 years building armor, and she was feeling it crack in real time. She didn't offer a speech. She told him the truth, that she had acted without thought, without decency, and without the basic human courtesy of finding out who he was before deciding he didn't belong. She told him she was sorry. And then she told him that if he was willing, the Meridian East Wing contract was his. Marcus was quiet for a moment that felt like it stretched across every hard month he'd endured. Then he said something that no one in that room expected. He said he would accept, but only if Meridian agreed to co-sponsor a subsidized lunch program for the construction workers on the project, the same men and women who had kept his small business alive when he had nothing else. The board agreed before he finished the sentence. Rosie got her medicine that night. The truck came home. And Marcus Webb, who had been invisible to a woman in a red suit that morning, signed a contract that would carry his daughter safely into the future he had always been building toward, one quiet, determined day at a time. If this story moved you, if it reminded you that dignity doesn't disappear just because someone refuses to see it, please share this video, leave a comment telling us what part touched your heart the most, and hit that subscribe button for Kindness Corner. Stories like Marcus's deserve to be heard. Before this story ends, drop one word in the comments that describes Marcus. The world needs more people like him. Some people get towed out of spaces they were never meant to leave. And some of them, quietly and without bitterness, find their way back to exactly where they were always supposed to be.